fireside is obviously it's not a real fire, but that's what we got at the moment. And in remembrance of everybody's Christmas around the world right now, and how diversified that is, the actions and the reactions of whatever this holiday brings up in memory and emotion for a multitude of people. A lot of people are still hanging on to the old idea of, Christmas tree and presents under the tree and all of that. But many people by now are beyond that and recognizing that this holiday is not what it was all cracked up to be. Yet at the same time, it can mean exactly that to some people. So it's not about judging one thing or another, but just recognizing the reality of what is one of my friends on the email thread from high school, Robbie, mentioned the Ukrainians. And that coupled with that understanding of how different from different parts of the world, how we're experiencing life at the moment. Families are split up. Families are split up here. There's a tremendous amount of separation and angst between families right here in Capital City. Well, not just Capital City, but out here in rural Virginia and all over our country. Split up politically, split up with all the nonsense that some of the Congress people are creating, and what we've gone through with the January 6th report and all of that, and what Trump has meant for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Well, for me it's been longer because I met Trump when I was 25 years old, when he inherited his money and came to New York in the advertising world where I was working, and started throwing his money around. And anyway, I became aware of him and actually didn't meet him personally, but we were at events at the same time, and I became aware of him. And look where we are, so many years later. And unfortunately, some people just are, no matter what proof is presented, don't get the reality of the importance of this moment in not only in our United States history, but really truly the evolution of humanity because of everything that's happening today. With all of that, I want to put out, my sister is also going through some challenges physically. She's in a hospital. She had a major operation, and I'm sure other people, friends that we have, they have people, friends, family who are having health issues. At our age, it's not unusual, most of us being around 78, 79, or maybe 77. But that age group, getting close to 80, um, with challenges coming out of COVID and all of that. So my heart goes out to everybody, and in recognition that we've all had such different quote unquote upbringing or experiences, understanding of what any of the world events was meaning, which was packed last century, and as well as just the first 20 some odd years of this one, and the questions of where might we be headed. So this is very specifically answering the question to my dear friend CJ and George Hamos. We've been talking about in this email thread, we've been talking about our experiences from Hungary and the revolution, and so I'm just going to quickly share a line as to what my true experience was. For some of you who may know or may not remember, may not know anymore, or didn't really get it, I was really born on April 30th, 1944, which was the first bombing of Budapest. My mother was literally on the delivery table. So I was born to an incredibly hysterical mom, that because everybody scattered during the bombing, and she had to give birth unattended, and it was not something that I specifically remember. Of course, from her stories, yes I do, but what is true is that my cell memories, as all of our cell memories as to when we were born, under what circumstances, and what was going on at the time, we were affected. And permanently for life, because that's how our life began on this beautiful earth of ours. So yes, I was born during that, and then of course I grew up under Stalin communism and witnessed the 56 revolution in Budapest. Had a number of very personal encounters relating to guns and firings and things happening. I'm not going to go into that right now because it's not the point, but definitely we were able to escape. Now CJ asked me that, she said that he wanted to hear my answer about the Ike invitees like ourselves of the 56 revolution. Well, my birth, the bombing was instructed by Ike. He was the, Eisenhower was the general that directed that Second World War effort along with the other allies. So I was born under the bombing direction of Ike. But interestingly enough, later on, I became very good friends with Eisenhower's granddaughter, Laura Eisenhower, and I never held it against Ike, but it was just very interesting to meet her, to meet his granddaughter, and understanding what she was aware of and how she was aware of the reactions to her grandfather, not only as the president, but before that as the general who was responsible for a lot of the war effort from the American side. And it's no time to discuss that, but it was just an interesting thing that I actually got personally Phil mentioned, one of my classmates mentioned that his mother was secretary, I think he said, to Eisenhower. And so it's interesting how these things can get personal. Now, the question of Putin and what's going on in Ukraine, and so much of that stuff was revealed because that really started. This started with Trump's engagement with Zelensky and trying to get him to find dirt on Biden's son's engagement in Ukraine, and created a lot of falsehood. And of course, Zelensky never claimed that anything that Trump said was true. And now, of course, the tables have turned, and everything has been revealed. And it's very plain to me that why Putin is in the position against those people in Ukraine is because of Trump's direct encouragement. Not all of this has been proven. Of course, there has been a lot of the impeachments were really about that, but it just wasn't allowed to get through. But there was Russia, and all of the other stuff is nonsense. And you got to understand that I am totally uninterested in being a political party member. I was very clear about seeing, after growing up under Stalin's handiwork, I was very, very aware of the bullshit being thrown out by the propaganda from the communists. And coming here, as soon as I started learning the language, like a year or so after I got here, so when we were about 13, 14, I began to really understand the propaganda that was being dished out here. And I just didn't understand at that time why any of the people here bought that stuff, because it's much of a propaganda as on everybody's propaganda. That's how wars are. So wars, we are war babies, and we're still, whether you can admit it or not, we're still suffering from all the stress that was created not only to us, but to our parents during that time, and our parents' parents, and our relatives, and their parents, our cousins, all of that stuff. Everybody was experiencing the aftermath of Second World War in different ways. And so my life was naturally, because of the circumstances of my birth, I call myself a born peacenik, because in my mind, nobody else always knew, but the way I looked at the world from very early on was, what the heck, why are people behaving this way with each other? And the answer, as long as we ask that question of why we don't get along, why we can't get along, the more we ask that question, the more we get the answers of why we can't get along. And we're shown that. So a long time ago, it became apparent to me that we have to ask a different question. The question is, how can we get along? So this has been my work most of my life, but especially, very specifically, the last 35 years, which is when I started my first nonprofit in California when I was still in the film business. At first, my first nonprofit was called Artists for Peace. And it was very clear that what we needed to do was, in Los Angeles, was freeze greed. And I planned an event on the Christmas, I forget now which year it was, I think it was 1984 maybe, when I was pulling away from the film business in Hollywood and all that stuff, and so I wanted to freeze one of the canals, the Venice canals, and just as a, you know, like they do in hockey rinks, they put a fake cover over one of the canals and put an ice rink over it, and have a slogan, freeze greed, because that is underneath the world's challenges, is the greed. And the greed of the, they call them one percenters. It's why so many of the others are suffering and under constant stress, constant duress of survival. And because it is the survival of the fittest. And there's no need in this 21st century to live that way and to witness this kind of inhumanity. That is being exhibited by not only Putin, but various different other strongmen, tyrannical, including our own country, Hungary. Viktor Orban. He is, he happened to be one of the closest friends to Trump, if you can call that friendship. Because he was appreciating the same desire that Trump was, which to be the king of the world, and at anybody's cost. And this is the bottom line. So one of my friends, Robbie, who is a Tulsi Gabbard supporter, well, I also lived in Hawaii for a couple of years, and I'm very aware of the politics there, and I've been very aware of Tulsi Gabbard's rise, and she's a military person who is a pretend Democrat. She doesn't really understand the deeper issues of what's going on, and she's unfortunately appreciating her opportunity coming from Hawaii. But my desire from Hawaii came out as in my desire to start to get one of those aircraft carriers, the biggest weapon of war, and from Pearl Harbor sail that ship around the world, having demilitarized it and turned it into a big deck of concert deck, and go from port to port in reverse from Pearl Harbor to Japan, and then on to the other, to maybe North Korea and China and all those places where they're warring now, and they just continue around in reverse motion, creating peace by playing incredible music and healing in reverse, healing all the bad feelings the wars have created. So that's my ultimate dream, is to be able to realize that. I've been at it for a long time. It hasn't happened, but you never know. And maybe, you know, one of the things that CJ said was, or was it George Holmes, that, yeah, it was George. He said that I've reduced my peace efforts to inner peace, because in reality, that's where it needs to go. If we don't have inner peace in each of us, there's no way the world can be at peace. Until humanity's critical mass shifts to that of what we call inner peace, nothing will change, because people can't hear. People may listen, but they can't really hear, because this has to be heard through the music of the heart and the rhythm of the heart. So with that, I wish all of us an opportunity to go within and experience your inner peace, and accept the rest of humanity as human beings instead of just people. Certainly not the idea that Democrats or Republicans, how shallow that is. It's not about Democrats and Republicans, no matter how much Kenny or Ivan or Phil or any of those people who are just unaware of the reality that we're all human beings first. The fire went out, so I'm going to start it up again and leave you with a little bit of fire, warmth of fire, and there. Modern technology. Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you again for the new year.